to convene an emergency session to unequivocally condemn the criminal act of aggression by the United States against Iran and to hold the administration in Washington accountable for its violations of fundamental principles of United Nations Charter and of norms of international law. Of course, the door for diplomacy should be always keep open, but this is not the case right now. My country has been under attack, under aggression, and we have to respond based on our legitimate right of self-defense. And we will do that as long as needed and necessary.
All right, more breaking news coming in. As part of the effort to deepen air superiority in Iranian skies, the Israeli Defense Force has now attacked 6 Iranian regime airports across western, eastern and central Iran. Now, the strikes have damaged runways, underground bunkers, a refueling plane and F-14, F-5 and H-1 aircrafts belonging to Tehran. Now, the aircrafts that were destroyed were intended for use against the Air Force aircrafts and to thwart their attacks on Iranian territory. The Air Force has disrupted the ability to take off from these airports and the operation of the Iranian army's air power from them. That is the big breaking news that we are getting in at the moment, viewers. Far from bringing both the parties to the negotiating table, there's only escalation in the Middle East, and now there's back-to-back attacks by the IDF on Tehran, and in the latest, it is now 6 airports belonging to the Iranian regime and to their military department that is now on their target. And we're learning that these latest strikes that have been carried out by the Israeli Air Force have damaged their runways, underground bunkers, a refueling plane and several of their aircrafts. And let's remember, viewers, in fact, the IDF has released a visual of their attacks, which is now on your screen. This is a visual representation of the airports which were precisely attacked by the Israeli Air Force. And let's remember that the IDF, in fact, released a statement earlier saying that missile attacks by the Iranian regime, even until late last night and early this morning, were thwarted and intercepted by Tel Aviv and the US missile defense system. And now, in response to that, the IDF has carried out precision strikes, the visuals of which are on your screens, on 6 Iranian airports. And while we stay with those visuals, on the other side, 20 Israeli jets hit military targets in Iran's Tehran, Kermanshah and Hamadan region. And the United Nations Security Council has held an emergency meeting after US strike on nuke sites in Iran. US has defended the strikes. We'll tell you all about that after a very short break.
आधे बाउल दही में 4 चम्मच MDH चटनी पुदीना मसाला डाला, स्टर करो, पुदीना चटनी तैयार। MDH चटनी पुदीना मसाला।
आपकी फेवरेट हुंडई कार्स पर मिल रही है अमेजिंग डील्स। वैसे लोगे तो आप हुंडई ही, चाहे दिल की सुनो या डील्स की, तो जल्दी चले आओ हुंडई शोरूम।
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
The fact is that Donald Trump said within 2 weeks he will take action. He could have taken action the very next hour. He said within 2 weeks. He did not say he's going to wait 2 weeks. He said within 2 weeks. And he's a man who he lives up to his word. And I can tell you that this is evolving exactly in the way that geopolitical analysis would lead it to evolve. With China basically joining hands with Iran, I think the Israelis will get a shock because they have been trying to cultivate the Chinese now for decades. And now I think they'll be given a rude reality check on that. And the US is inevitable it comes in because it is not going to allow a nuclearized Iran. There's no question about that. It's not going to allow it. And so what we are witnessing is the beginning of of something that could be international ramifications. You already got China into it. I hope for Russia's sake that Putin is not going lockstep with China, but he declines from giving massive assistance to Iran, because that is going to help the US diplomacy under Donald Trump. But all in all, I know what side India is on. India is on the side of the democracies. Prime Minister Modi is on the side of the democracies. He understands geopolitics very well. And Trump also understands geopolitics very well. I know Putin also understands geopolitics very well. And it's in Russia's interest to ensure that it does not join with China in a full-scale attempt, a futile attempt, if I may say so, to try and assist Iran. So I'd like to say what we are seeing now is a very significant development that has been really brewing for so many years, since Cold War 2.0 between the US and China in particular. Other democracies also came. And now it is bursting into a kinetic phase. And I'm not surprised by that.
All right, now back home, in a major breakthrough in the Pahalgam terror attack case, the National Investigation Agency has arrested 2 key Lashkar-e-Toiba associates. Now, after months of intensive ground investigation, the accused have been brought to Jammu, where they will be soon presented in court. The NIA has confirmed, in fact, that the duo provided critical support to Pakistani terrorists involved in the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack.
In a major breakthrough, National Investigation Agency has arrested 2 terror associates of Lashkar-e-Toiba that were actively involved in the Pahalgam terror attack that claimed the life of 26 innocent civilians. Right now, we are outside the headquarters of the National Investigation Agency, where both the accused have been kept by the agency, and they will be produced before the NIA court in a short while from now. Yesterday, NIA made the arrest of Parvez Ahmed Jothar and Bashir Ahmed Jothar from the Pahalgam, and they were the ones who provided not only the logistic support but also they provided the support to the terrorists before executing the attack. They helped the terrorists hide in their thokes, after which the terrorists carried out the Pahalgam terror attack. Now, as we speak, the accused are inside the NIA headquarters in Jammu, from where they will be taken to the NIA court in Jammu, wherein the NIA will be seeking their custody, and soon after seeking their custody, they will be taken back to the Kashmir Valley for the scene recreation as well as to gather some crucial evidences. Important to mention that they were involved not only in helping 3 Pakistani terrorists of Lashkar-e-Toiba, but they were part of this larger conspiracy that was hatched by the Pakistani terror group Lashkar-e-Toiba to bleed the innocent tourists that have come to Pahalgam. And now, as we speak, they are presently being questioned by the NIA teams before they are present before the NIA court in Jammu. This was yesterday that the arrest was made. This was a sole and exclusive operation of the National Investigation Agency teams that camped in the Pahalgam for more than 2 months' time, rentless after the 22 April Pahalgam terror attack, and then they cracked this case based on some digital evidences as well as the human intelligence that was generated by the agency. And now the agency is looking into the forward and backward linkages of both Parvez and Bashir, so that they can reach out to their acquaintance, because see, without local help this attack was not possible. That was very clear from day one. But who all were involved and how this was executed, that is what the National Investigation Agency is working upon.
And we slip into a very short break, but on the other side, US President Donald Trump hints at a possible regime change in Iran, warns that make Iran great again or a regime change. And there's a crucial discussion that is set to take place at the White House. Donald Trump is set to hold a conflict meeting with his national security team this afternoon. Stay tuned as we track all that and a lot more for you.
MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल, ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े, क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
विमल में गुलिस्तां के ये कुछ लजीज फरिश्ते जब साथ घुले तो जी ललचाए और दिल कहे कि स्वाद की जुबान में खुद को ऐसे डुबाऊं कि निकल ना पाऊं। विमल की जुबान कुछ है ही ऐसी, मानते हैं? विमल, बोलो जुबान कैसी?
ये है सीक्रेट रेसिपी MDH का जीरा सिप जल जीरा मसाला। सिप सिप जीरा सिप MDH का जल जीरा सिप MDH का जल जीरा सिप।
The fact is that Donald Trump said within 2 weeks he will take action. He could have taken action the very next hour. He said within 2 weeks. He did not say he's going to wait 2 weeks. He said within 2 weeks. And he's a man who he lives up to his word. And I can tell you that this is evolving exactly in the way that geopolitical analysis would lead it to evolve. With China basically joining hands with Iran, I think the Israelis will get a shock because they have been trying to cultivate the Chinese now for decades. And now I think they'll be given a rude reality check on that. And the US is inevitable it comes in because it is not going to allow a nuclearized Iran. There's no question about that. It's not going to allow it. And so what we are witnessing is the beginning of a
It's very difficult to speculate on the price factor. The oil price for a long time was between 65 and 70. Then it was between 70 and 75. Today is a Sunday. When the markets open tomorrow, then the consequences of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz will be factored in. But as I've been saying for a long time, there is enough oil available in the global markets. More and more oil is coming on the global markets, particularly from the Western Hemisphere. And even the traditional suppliers would be interested in keeping the supplies on because they also need the revenue. So hopefully the market will factor that in. But as I said, the Modi government has over the past several years not only ensured the stability of supplies but also affordability. And we will take all necessary measures to ensure that.
विमल में गुलिस्तां की ये कुछ लजीज फरिश्ते जब साथ घुले तो जी ललचाए और दिल कहे कि स्वाद की इस जुबान में खुद को ऐसा डुबाऊं कि निकल ना पाऊं। विमल की जुबान कुछ है ही ऐसी, मानते हैं ना? विमल, बोलो जुबान केसरी।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history.
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Thank you for staying with Republic TV. You're watching Live and Breaking this Monday with me, Arnab. We are tracking all the developments for you that's coming in from the Middle East as the conflict between Israel and Iran grows. Lots of reactions, fresh airstrikes by the IDF that has been carried out in Tehran. Tracking that and a lot more for you. But first, the headlines at 12 p.m. No sign of de-escalation. Israeli defense forces have struck 6 airports in Iran, destroyed 15 Iranian regime aircraft and helicopters. Iranian foreign minister arrives in Moscow to meet President Vladimir Putin. Trump proposes to make Iran great again, hinting at a possible regime change. Crucial conflict meeting at the White House today. Australia backs US while Russia, China and North Korea condemn all eyes on West Asia conflict. United Nations Security Council holds emergency meeting after US hits nuke sites in Iran. US defends the airstrikes. Pakistan condemns strike on US strikes on Iran. Pakistan politicians ask government to reconsider Trump's nomination for Nobel Peace Prize. All right, we start this edition with some breaking news coming in. As part of the effort to deepen air superiority in the Iranian skies, the Israeli Defense Force has now attacked 6 Iranian regime airports in western, eastern and central Iran, I beg your pardon. Now, the strikes have damaged runways, underground bunkers, a refueling plane, and F-14, F-5 and AH-1 aircrafts belonging to the Iranian regime. Now, we're learning that these aircrafts that were destroyed by the IDF were intended for use against the Air Force, and this was to thwart their attacks on the Iranian territory. The Israeli Air Force has in fact disrupted the ability for them to take off from these airports and continue their operations against the state of Israel. Those are the visuals of the latest IDF action on your screen. The IDF has bombed 6 airports across the state of Iran, and this is the latest action that we are getting in. The IDF, remember viewers, has carried out back-to-back strikes across various regions in Tehran, essentially destroying Iranian missile launchers, their underground bunkers, and now we are learning that these are 6 Iranian airports and aircraft that is now on the target of Tel Aviv. And joining me live from Tel Aviv is Nick Koliotin. He's been reporting for Republic over the last few days. Nick, thank you for speaking to us this morning. There's fresh action that has been carried out by the IDF. You're on ground. What is the latest that you're picking up? What is the ground situation like in Tel Aviv and across Israel?
So in Tel Aviv, as you can see here behind me, some of the places are open, coffee places. but workplaces and big places, all the events, gatherings of people, everything is canceled. Also the schools, kindergartens, because Israel is waiting for another barrages of rockets coming from Iran. Iran continues every day to bombard this kind of regions, like here behind me, residential regions, and that's why Israel on high alert. And from the Israeli perspective, this war could be concluded soon because Israel, with the help of the United States, destroyed the imminent threat to eliminate Israel with the weapons of mass destruction, with the atomic bombs, and now there is no threat like this anymore, and that's why Israel now more calm, and from its perspective, it's better to stop. But if Iran will continue to strike Israel and residential places in Israel, probably it will try with the United States to change the regime in Iran, regime that was taken by fanatics in 1979, by Ayatollahs, by Islamist groups, Islamic groups of people that they don't care about even their own people, that they terrorize them and they terrorize Israel. So we need to see what will come next. Back to you.
Interesting point that you made, Nick, when you said that this war essentially may be over for Israel. I will come back to you on that because hold on, we have some more breaking news coming in. We're learning that there have been fresh airstrikes in the Kermanshah region in Iran, where more than 15 Israeli Air Force fighter jets have recently attacked with precise intelligence guidance from the Intelligence Directorate. And in the Kermanshah region, viewers, we're learning that the IAF, that is the Israeli Air Force, has destroyed several launch and storage sites for surface-to-surface missiles aimed at the territory of the State of Israel. Now, the IDF is continuing to intensify its attack on the Iranian regime's military capabilities and will continue to work to achieve air superiority in order to maintain security and the sovereignty of Israel. Nick, I'd like to go back to you on that point that you made earlier. You said that this war may essentially be over for Israel. So how do you read this situation? And are you telling us that Israel, in a sense, with the help of the United States and the operation that they carried out, have achieved all its military objectives against Tehran?
Yes, I spoke with some officials, former officials from the Israeli different authorities and security defense forces, and they're saying that the imminent threat was destroyed. The imminent threat of Iran building nuclear weapons and launching them towards Israel is not existing anymore, but maybe they escaped, maybe they hide some of these very hazardous materials, and maybe they can make a dirty bomb if it's possible at all, but they can't make the regular nuclear weapons as they wanted for tens of years, and they made a lot of effort for that, and they put a lot of money in this project. So this is not existing anymore, but Israel understands that still Iran poses a threat. Iran can harm Israel in many different ways. And the most dangerous one, as I said, is a dirty bomb, which maybe they can make from some of the residue of the nuclear materials that they still hide somewhere. But this is something that maybe Israel can live with and can continue its war in the shadows against Iran, as it did until today. But this hot conflict maybe should end for Israel, because as you can see, it is really bad for the Israeli economy, for the Israeli public. Israelis don't want it to continue. Back to you.
Right. All right. Nick, I'd like you to stay on with us as we track more developments from the Middle East. Now, viewers, Iran has carried out a barrage of missile attacks against Israel barely hours after the United States attacked key Iranian nuclear sites. Now, Loud explosions were heard in coastal hubs of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem on Sunday, shortly after the Israeli military reported incoming Iranian missiles and activated their air defense systems. Sirens rang across Israeli cities, with rescue services and media reports saying that at least 16 people were reportedly injured. Here's what happened.
اعلام می‌کنیم هنوز بخش‌های اصلی ظرفیت نیروهای مسلح جمهوری اسلامی ایران در این دفاع مقدس عملیاتی نشده‌اند. موج 20 عملیات وعده صادق 3 با شلیک 40 فروند موشک سوخت جامد و مایع. در این عملیات برای نخستین بار از موشک بالستیک چند کلاهکی خیبرشکن از نسل سوم موشک‌های هوافضای سپاه پاسداران با بهره‌گیری از تاکتیک‌های جدید و غافلگیر کننده جهت اصابت دقیق‌تر، مخربتر و مؤثرتر استفاده شد.
מרגישה כרגע קצת בלחץ, קצת מחזיקים מעמד. אני לא יכולה להסביר את ההרגשה שלי, כי מתי ששמענו את הבומים חשבנו שזה נכנס לבית שלנו. אני גרה בבית הזה, וגם בבית הזה יש לי עסק שזה מספרה ובוטיק.
תראו איזה כוח, איזה הרס. מזמור לדוד אדוני רואה עכשיו מנות את השם.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the three key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
And viewers, more breaking news coming in amid the escalation in the Middle East. There are fresh attacks that have now been reported in the Kermanshah region, where the Israeli Defense Forces have released an update saying that their air force is carrying out attacks in Tehran, specifically in the Kermanshah region. And this is some additional information that we are picking up after we told you that at least 15 Israeli Air Force fighter jets were carrying out precise intelligence-based strikes after receiving inputs from their intelligence directorate. And these fresh airstrikes, viewers, we are learning, is aimed at destroying several launch pads and storage sites of surface-to-surface missiles that are deployed by Iran to attack Israel. And we have a guest joining us live on Republic TV. We have Group Captain UK Devnath joining me live this morning. Sir, thank you so much for speaking to Republic TV. We're tracking the story very, very closely. There's no signs of a ceasefire anytime soon. My very pointed question to you, sir, is Iran having been fighting a two-front war, one with the United States, one with Israel. What will it take for Tehran to come to the negotiating table and strike a deal with Israel?
Very, very pointed question. Good response will be that Iran has been saying for last 10 days that it is willing to speak to USA and negotiate a nuclear deal. provided Israel stops bombing of Iran. But now USA also has carried out bombing of Iran. So Iran would now like to speak only after US and Israel stop bombing of Iran. But after US bombing of Iran, the public opinion in Iran has gone through the roof. Now public wants revenge. So now it will be very difficult for Ayatollah Khamenei or his very, very moderate and rather learned president Pezeshkian to convince people of Iran that they may try to negotiate with the USA, because after this USA bombing of yesterday, entire Iranian public support, including supporters of Khomeini regime, they want revenge to be taken, and they don't want that their regime should speak to USA directly or indirectly. Yes.
Right, sir. All right, Group Captain UK Devnath, thank you for your insights on the matter. We'll keep coming back to you as we track these developments very closely. Now, viewers, back home, Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri has assured that India has had enough oil stocks to meet its needs, with oil marketing companies having stocks worth up to 3 weeks. Now, India imports around 5.5 million barrels of crude oil daily, with 1.5 to 2 million barrels coming just through the Strait of Hormuz. Here's a quick report on what the Union Minister had to say.
It's very difficult to speculate on the price factor. The oil price for a long time was between 65 and 70. Then it was between 70 and 75. Today is a Sunday. When the markets open tomorrow, then the consequences of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz will be factored in. But as I've been saying for a long time, there is enough oil available in the global markets. More and more oil is coming on the global markets, particularly from the Western Hemisphere. And even the traditional suppliers would be interested in keeping the supplies on, because they also need the revenue. So hopefully the market will factor that in. But as I said, the Modi government has over the past several years not only ensured the stability of supplies, but also affordability. And we will take all necessary measures to ensure that.
All right, tracking more breaking news coming in. Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, has issued a stark warning to the United Nations Security Council about Iran's precarious situation. Now, Grossi has emphasized that the nuclear non-proliferation regime, which has maintained international security for over half a century, is at risk due to the escalating conflict. So this is a warning that has been issued by the IAEA, urging Iran, Israel to maintain diplomacy amid a massive escalation that we have seen over the last few days. And remember, viewers, this latest statement comes in as several global leaders have called on Tehran to completely abandon their nuclear program and urged Iran to go back to a situation, to come to the negotiating table, to promote a situation which promotes global peace and stability. And in the latest, it is now the International Atomic Energy Agency which has written to the United Nations. And slipping into a very short break, on the other side, Australia backs US while Russia, China and North Korea condemn Operation Midnight Hammer. And the United Nations Security Council has held an emergency meeting after US has struck key nuclear sites in Iran and gone on to defend the strikes. We'll get you that and a lot more after a very quick break.
विमल में गुलिस्तां के ये कुछ लजीज फरिश्ते जब साथ गुलें तो जी ललचाए और दिल कहे कि स्वाद की जुबां में खुद को ऐसे डुबाऊं कि निकल ना पाऊं। विमल की जुबां कुछ है ही ऐसी, मानते हैं? विमल, बोलो जुबां कैसी?
अब छोलिया हो या लोबिया, सफेद चने या काले चने,
सब कुछ मजेदार बने।
MDH।
The fact is that Donald Trump said within 2 weeks he will take action. He could have taken action the very next hour. He said within 2 weeks. He did not say he's going to wait 2 weeks. He said within 2 weeks. And he's a man who he lives up to his word. And I can tell you that this is evolving exactly in the way that geopolitical analysis would lead it to evolve. With China basically joining hands with Iran, I think the Israelis will get a shock because they have been trying to cultivate the Chinese now for decades. And now I think they'll be given a rude reality check on that. And the US is inevitable it comes in because it is not going to allow a nuclearized Iran. There's no question about that. It's not going to allow it. And so what we are witnessing is the beginning of of something that could be international ramifications. You already got China into it. I hope for Russia's sake that Putin is not going lockstep with China, but he declines from giving massive assistance to Iran because that is going to help the US diplomacy under Donald Trump. But all in all, I know what side India is on. India is on the side of the democracies. Prime Minister Modi is on the side of the democracies. He understands geopolitics very well. And Trump also understands geopolitics very well. I know Putin also understands geopolitics very well. And it's in Russia's interest to ensure that it does not join with China in a full-scale attempt, a futile attempt, if I may say so, to try and assist Iran. So I'd like to say what we are seeing now is a very significant development that has been really brewing for so many years, since Cold War 2.0 between the US and China in particular. Other democracies also came. And now it is bursting into a kinetic phase. And I'm not surprised by that. I don't think anybody...
Now, in the aftermath of US strikes on Iran, protests have broken out in the United States. The Big Apple has turned into a stage for emotion, commotion, and demonstrations. Pro-Palestinian flags were raised, condemning the Trump government's actions against Iran. Here's a quick report. Take a look.
Anti-war protests have broken out in New York City just hours after the US struck Iranian nuclear sites. The anger on the streets is clear as demonstrators march to condemn the strikes and call for an immediate end to the conflict. The protests are in direct response to Operation Midnight Hammer, the US mission that targeted key nuclear sites in Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz. Protesters waved Palestinian flags and held signs demanding the US to stop its military action. Many also pointed to Israel's role in triggering the conflict, calling out its ongoing military operation in Gaza Strip. As crowds gathered, the New York Police Department stepped up security, deploying more officers around religious, cultural, and diplomatic sites across the city. Authorities say that they are taking extra precautions and staying in close contact with federal partners. The protests come as US defense officials confirmed the strikes successfully hit their intended targets while avoiding civilian and troop casualties. While Washington claims a military success, the unrest at home shows this conflict is already spilling onto the American streets. And with the Middle East on the edge, this could be just the beginning.
Bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities, I think that was a very intelligent decision by the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Hence why I'm wearing Make America Great Again. Because if we let them do what they are going to do, then not only is Israel going to be wiped out, but we are as Americans, assuming you are one, we will be the next target. They're not afraid to kill us.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's the best thing that Trump could have done. It should have been done 40 years ago.
We think this was a dangerous provocation. Trump's policy is clearly to stoke the fires and try to start World War III. It is in no way about negotiation. It's absolutely ridiculous for him to say that, and nobody should believe that.
In more news and updates from the Middle East, daily life in Tehran appeared largely unaffected after US strikes on nuclear facilities and military sites in Iran, and as exchanges between Israel and Iran continue, no disruption to electricity, water or basic services have been reported, and some residents have now returned to the city after fleeing last week. During a UN Security Council meeting, Russia and China have condemned the United States and Israel's strikes on Iran. Vasily Nebensia, Russian ambassador to the UN, said that the United States has opened a Pandora's box through their actions. He said that no one knows what new catastrophes and suffering it will bring. He shared that there were 3 briefings from the Director General of the International Atomic Agency, Mr. Rafael Grossi, in the last 10 days. He cautioned that strikes on Iranian nuclear infrastructure could have absolutely unpredictable repercussions and pose a major threat to the whole world. Israeli ambassador to the United Nations was also present at the UN Security Council meeting in New York City. He defended the United States' action on Iranian nuclear sites. He stated that last night history changed and that the greatest existential threat facing the free world was removed. He stated that just like Israel's Operation Rising Lion, this was not a war of choice. This action was a necessity. He stated that this was a righteous act for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East and for the world. Assistant Secretary General for Europe, Central Asia and America spoke at the United Nations Security Council meeting and said that Iran has claimed that there were no immediate signs of a radioactive contamination at the 3 locations following the strikes. He said that preliminary open source satellite imagery shows more damage at various points at the Fordo nuclear site than what the Iranian state media claims. He urged Iran to allow the IAEA inspectors to access the sites to conduct damage assessments as soon as safety conditions allow. The walls of Jerusalem's Old City were illuminated last night with the flags of the United States and Israel. This follows the US destroying Iran's 3 nuclear sites with missiles and bunker buster bombs. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised US President Donald Trump after the strikes. The projection on the Old City wall symbolizes the 2 nations standing together against Iran. No sign of a de-escalation. Israeli defense forces have struck 6 airports in Iran, destroyed 15 Iranian regime aircraft and helicopters. An Iranian foreign minister arrives in Moscow to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin after the US attack. Slipping into a short break, more news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned to Republic TV.
In the India Today Best Universities Survey, India's #1 ranked universities in various streams are JNU Delhi, Amity University, AIMS Delhi, IIT Delhi, and National Law School, Bengaluru.
आधे बाउल दही में 4 चम्मच MDA चटनी पुदीना मसाला डाला, स्टर करो, पुदीना चटनी तैयार। MDA चटनी पुदीना मसाला।
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children. It was nearly 10 years ago that a bright September day was darkened by the worst attack on the American people in our history. The images of 9/11 are seared into our national memory. Hijacked planes cutting through a cloudless September sky, the Twin Towers collapsing to the ground, black smoke billowing up from the Pentagon, the wreckage of Flight 93 in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the actions of heroic citizens saved even more heartbreak and destruction. And yet we know that the worst images are those that were unseen to the world. The empty seat at the dinner table, children who were forced to grow up without their mother or their father, parents who would never know the feeling of their child's embrace, nearly 3,000 citizens taken from us, leaving a gaping hole in our hearts.
Each night on Prime Time, we don't just bring you the news. We lead it with responsibility, asking the toughest questions, breaking the biggest stories, setting the national agenda. At the Republic School of Journalism, you learn how to front the news with clarity, confidence, and conviction. The RSJ Diploma program begins on the 30th of June. Your Prime Time starts here.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Live and Breaking with me, Krutal Patnaik, at 12:30 p.m. this Monday afternoon. Our top story remains that after last night's strikes on the nuclear facilities in Iran, after US's massive escalation, a lone ballistic missile was fired by Iran in retaliation, which was intercepted. However, now publicly also, US President Donald Trump has begun to muse about a potential regime change in Iran. What are the details on that story? I'll bring you in just a moment. But as always, let's start this Live and Breaking Bulletin with the headlines. No signs of de-escalation. Israeli defense forces have struck 6 airports in Iran, destroyed 15 Iranian regime aircrafts and helicopters. Iranian foreign minister arrives in Moscow to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin after US struck its nuclear strikes in an attack. US President Donald Trump proposes Make Iran Great Again pitch, hinting at a possible regime change. Crucial conflict meeting at a White House today. Australia backs US while Russia and China and North Korea condemn. All eyes are now on the conflict on West Asia. United Nations Security Council holds emergency meeting after US hits nuclear sites in Iran. US defends its motives. Pakistan condemns strikes on Iran by US. Pakistan politicians ask government to reconsider Trump's nomination for Nobel Peace Prize. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, as part of the efforts to deepen air superiority in the Iranian skies, the Israeli Defense Forces have attacked 6 Iranian regime airports in the western, eastern and the central parts of Iran. These strikes have damaged runways, underground bunkers and a refueling lane along with F-14 and F-5 and AH-1 helicopters belonging to the Iranian Air Force. Now, the aircraft that were destroyed were intended to be used against the US Air Force aircraft, and also they were meant to thwart their attacks on the Iranian territory. However, the Air Force of Israel has now disrupted the ability of these aircraft to take off from these airports, and the operations of the Iranian army's air power, or rather the air wing of the Iranian armed forces, has now been severely limited. Those are the visuals on your screen. That's a detailed map of all the 6 airports that were struck heavily. You can see a heavy concentration in the western part of Iran, as we saw on the first night also of Operation Rising Lion. IDF forces had establish complete air superiority in the western parts by targeting various radar sites, particularly in the western provinces, all the way up till Tehran. Yesterday's strikes of the United States also heavily focused on Iran's nuclear capabilities in the southern part of Iran. And now today, more information coming in. That is the visual released by the Israeli Defense Air Forces. 6 aircrafts have been targeted also on the various 6 airports across Iran. These include the F-5 and AH-1 helicopters of Iran and Iranian Air Force, which already was struggling a lot to maintain any semblance of air superiority in its airspace since Operation Rising Lion started, has now faced another challenge. While those were the visuals of the Air Force and superiority in the air, Israeli Army radio is now reporting that a lone ballistic missile was fired at Israel last night following destruction of Iran's nuclear sites, which was intercepted by a US missile defense system. That's the big breaking update that is coming in. Iran has not been able to retaliate in proportion since the strikes by the B-2 bombers of the US Air Force that targeted various nuclear sites across Iran yesterday with impunity. In retaliation, a lone ballistic missile was fired is the claim that is made by the Israeli Defense Forces at the moment, and the Army radio is saying that that lone ballistic missile was intercepted by a US missile defense system that the Israelis had, beg your pardon, and that's the big breaking news update that is coming in. Not strong retaliation coming in from the Iranian side, a lone ballistic missile intercepted. That is what the Israelis say. Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, the Israel-Iran conflict is escalating, and the question on everybody's mind is that could this lead to a mega proxy war involving Russia and China in this entire situation? In this in-depth analysis by Major General G.D. Bakshi, he breaks down the complex geopolitical dynamics, offering his unique insights on how a global power like China or Russia might draw into the ongoing tensions. Could they support Iran directly or indirectly in a clash against Israel and its allies? How would such an impact be on global security and regional alliances, and how would it shift the entire balance of power? Here's a detailed analysis by Major General G.D. Bakshi.
The Russian President Putin himself had said, don't hit the nuclear facilities, especially Bushehr. He had warned that in Bushehr there are about 150 Russian engineers and technicians, and he had expressed concerns about their safety. He had warned about their safety, and he had said, we are not withdrawing them. So that is very truculent language, right? And I don't think with this kind of statements on record, doing nothing becomes an option for the Russians. The Chinese are, a different cup of tea. The Chinese are in deep trouble at home. Almost about 100 generals have either been sacked, killed, or imprisoned, which includes the vice chairman of the Central Military Commission, about at least 20 top generals, and also 3 defense ministers. They had been removed. So I don't see China in much of a position to do anything more than what it has done already. It has sent 3 massive cargo plane loads of equipment. What kind of equipment, we do not know. But yes, it could supply surface-to-air missiles. It could supply North Korean surface-to-surface missiles. So could the Russians send in those aircraft. And if those aircraft are attacked, well, you have a widening of the conflict right away, right? As far as Iran is concerned, psyche-wise, the Shia penchant for martyrdom, for fighting unequal fights, is historically, civilizationally known to all, right? So doing nothing is just not an option for the Ayatollah and his regime. And like they are saying, I expect the retaliation now to come against American targets, whom they, as they quote unquote say, is the great Satan, right? And they are likely to hit the American bases in the Middle East. The point is, the Americans were anticipating it. They have cleared out most of their, people who are not required, equipment that is not required. C-130 aircraft were taken out from the Oman base. and other bases. They are thinning out that area because they know this is the most likely target to Iran if it wants to act muscular. It will also open Iran to massive bombardment and the entire force of the American military, which is there in theater, and it is considerable. The point at issue is they hit the Houthis for 7 weeks. Will the Iranians take it on for 7 weeks before they cry uncle? What would be the level of intervention? I think the intervention from the Russians would be to supply equipment, would be to threaten NATO countries not to join in, and the rest depends upon, the principal protagonist. If Iran chooses to do nothing, well, the rest of the world can do nothing. But I do not think that is the choice Iran will make. I do not think that is the choice Iran will make at all.
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, as concerns over Russia and China's potential involvement in this entire conflict escalates, a big breaking news update is coming in. Now, the United Kingdom is urging for de-escalation as Iran mulls over response to the United States strikes and the Israeli strikes that have carried on over the last few days. The UK ambassador Barbara Woodward has said that the United Nations must make a long-term arrangement in this situation. The exact quote is that we have long made it clear that Iran must not have nuclear weapons and that the nuclear program represents a serious threat to the international peace and global security. However, she further said that this United States action that was taken last night to alleviate that threat, United Kingdom did not participate in US or Israeli strikes, but the military action alone cannot bridge a durable solution and concerns about Iran's nuclear program. So that's the official position of the United Kingdom at the moment, saying that military action alone cannot bring a solution to Iran's nuclear program, and that UK has made it clear that it had no role involved in this entire sequence of events, particularly the strikes that have been carried out in Iranian territory. We also saw just last week, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer had also dispatched jets in the area for additional security. And now this is the official version of what the UK ambassador has said at the United Nations Security Council. Listen in, ladies and gentlemen.
We have long made clear that Iran must not have a nuclear weapon and that their nuclear program represents a serious threat to international peace and security. The United States took action last night to alleviate that threat. The United Kingdom did not participate in US or Israeli strikes. But military action alone cannot bring a durable solution to concerns about Iran's nuclear program.
Meanwhile, the UK ambassador was not alone. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also joined calls on Iran to abandon its nuclear program. That's the big breaking news update that is coming in. Along with the United Kingdom, Australia now also has taken an official position urging Iran to abandon the nuclear program. And we have a reaction coming in from the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on this entire matter. Listen in, ladies and gentlemen, to what is Australia's official position after US has carried out strikes on nuclear targets in Iran.
The world has long agreed that Iran cannot be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and we support action to prevent that, and that is what this is. The US action was directed at specific sites central to Iran's nuclear program. We don't want escalation and a full-scale war. We continue to call for dialogue and for diplomacy. As I've said for many days now, we are deeply concerned about any escalation in the region, and we want to see diplomacy, dialogue and de-escalation. We've been upfront about the challenge facing the international community, that is, dealing with the threat posed by any Iranian nuclear weapons program and dealing with the risk of regional escalation. And that's why Australia called upon Iran to come to the table and abandon any nuclear weapons program. Iran didn't come to the table just as it has repeatedly failed to comply with its international obligations. We urge Iran not to take any further action that could destabilise the region.
Meanwhile, US allies are attempting to prevail on Iran to de-escalate the entire situation. The Iranians have now even threatened to blockade the Strait of Hormuz, a very critical sea route through which most of the world's energy supplies travel. Now, Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri has assured that India has enough oil stockpiles to meet its needs, while all marketing companies have also enough stocks worth up to 3 weeks. India's imports of around 5.5 million barrels of crude oil daily, with 1.5 to 2 million barrels a day coming through Strait of Hormuz, it is natural that India's concerns are high. But here is what Union Minister of Petroleum had to say on the possible impact of Iran's actions on India's energy security.
It's very difficult to speculate on the price factor. The oil price for a long time was between 65 and 70. Then it was between 70 and 75. Today is a Sunday. When the markets open tomorrow, then the consequences of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz will be factored in. But as I've been saying for a long time, there is enough oil available in the global markets. More and more oil is coming on the global markets, particularly from the Western Hemisphere. And even the traditional suppliers would be interested in keeping the supplies on because they also need the revenue. So hopefully the market will factor that in. But as I said, the Modi government has over the past several years not only ensured the stability of supplies but also affordability. And we will take all necessary measures to ensure that.
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, as the tensions continue to rise in West Asia, the biggest question everybody is asking is, where is the United Nations? Now, the United Nations is on high alert as America has struck Iran's nuclear sites, triggering global shockwaves. With Israel now officially backing US's position and Iran vowing very serious retaliation, all eyes are now on the United Nations Security Council, which is turning into a battleground of warnings and defense calls. Here's a detailed report on what exactly is happening in the divided house that is the United Nations.
The United Nations, a house divided as the world confronts the fallout of America's lightning strike on Iran's nuclear program. At an emergency session of the Security Council, sharp lines were drawn. Israel's top diplomat mounted a fierce defense, standing firmly behind US's decision to act.
In the last 24 hours, history changed. The United States of America struck Iran's nuclear sites at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. It was a necessary act and a brave decision to remove the greatest threat to global security.
While Israel backed Washington's offensive, many close US allies pressed for restraint, calling for a return to negotiations before the region spirals into an uncontrollable war. At the center of the storm, the Secretary General, alarmed by the fast escalating conflict, warned the Middle East can no longer absorb another cycle of devastation.
I made a direct appeal: give peace a chance. That call was not heeded. Instead, the bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities by the United States marks a perilous turn in a region that is already reeling. From the outset of the crisis, I have repeatedly condemned any military escalation in the Middle East. The people of the region cannot endure another cycle of destruction.
The United States defended its actions with forceful clarity, declaring the strikes necessary to protect its citizens and its closest ally.
In recent weeks, Iranian officials have intensified their hostile bluster and rhetoric. Iran has long obfuscated its nuclear weapons program and stonewalled good faith efforts in recent negotiations. Madam President, the time finally came for the United States, in the defense of its ally and in the defense of our own citizens and interest, to act decisively. The Iranian regime cannot have a nuclear weapon. Let us be clear. Iran should not escalate.
But Tehran made its position equally clear. Iran's ambassador accused the United States of destroying diplomacy and vowed that Iran's response is no longer a question of if but when.
The timing, nature, and the scale of Iran's proportionate response will be decided by its armed forces. Throughout history, the resilient and united Iranian nation has withstood deeper wounded and faced more vicious enemies, and this time too. It will show its dignity, strength, and greatness to the world.
Across the chamber, some regional players condemned the strikes, others, quietly supportive, called for de-escalation, fearing the region may now descend into a deadly cycle of blow-for-blow retaliation. The tension inside the United Nations is a mirror of what is unfolding outside it. A Middle East on the edge. Just days ago, President Trump told the world that he would take 2 weeks to decide on military action, but that was to keep the world guessing and to strike Iran when its guard was down. 3 Iranian nuclear sites were struck, the war drums beating louder, and the world now waiting for Iran's next move.
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, a big breaking news update is coming in. Iranian army's official spokesperson has now shifted to English for a chilling threat to Donald Trump. The Iranian officials have officially now shifted their attack directly on the Donald Trump, and they have said, quote, "Gambler Trump, you can start this war, but we will be the ones who end it." Promises powerful operations with heavy consequences that await the United States. That's the big breaking news update coming in. The Iranian army has launched a very direct attack on US President Donald Trump as all lines of communication seem to be deteriorating between Israel, Iran and US. After US's strikes, Iran has now shifted to English and launched a direct threat at US President Donald Trump, referring to him as a gambler. And the Iranian government officially, the Iranian army's official spokesperson has said to Donald Trump, saying that, "Gambler Trump, you can start this war, but we will be the ones who end it." Following it up with another strong threat of powerful operations with heavy consequences that await the United States. That's a big breaking news update that is coming in a massive escalation now in the war of words between Iran and the United States. The Iranian army, for the first time ever, has now officially targeted US President Donald Trump, calling him a gambler who started this war, and now the Iranians will be the ones who end it through powerful operations, and which will lead to heavy consequences that await the United States. That's a big, tremendous warning given by the Iranians as developments rapidly trickle in from the West Asian theater of war. A massive escalation is awaited, and the Iranians seem to have burned all lines of communication in terms of diplomatically dropping 9 cities and directly going after US President Donald Trump in the statement that is officially released by the Iranian army. That's the big breaking news update that we are tracking in the theater of West Asia as the war situation escalates between Israel and Iran, with now an official threat given by the Iranian official army spokesperson to US President Donald Trump. Meanwhile, coming up next on Live and Breaking, the world is divided over the war. United Nations Security Council deep diving into various facets, however, no conclusion in sight. Meanwhile, another big breaking update.
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला, क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
Ali Khamenei is living in the very center of Tehran, in the supreme leader headquarters. But of course, he left this building, this complex actually, on Friday.